A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode of Build Hatch, I got to sit down with our first brothers on the show, Tom and Will from Urban & Co. This week's episode is a beauty because you're going to hear how two brothers who grew up in a country town made a collective decision to move to the big smoke and start a business from scratch with absolutely no contacts whatsoever. These guys put their own feet in the door and I love it. You'll get to hear how these guys thought of their business concept, what systems and processes they put into place, and the process of developing contacts and building up relationships through playing local sport and meeting new people organically. This has now led Urban & Co into the fast-growing design and project management firm in Sydney. Like I said, these guys started from scratch without any contacts or connections, and I love these stories. Now let's get into it. Tom and Will from Urban & Co in Sydney, welcome to Build Hatch.
Thanks for having us.
Now, you're our first brothers on the show, which is pretty cool. So your business is a design and construction company. If you could describe Urban & Co, what's your sort of bread and butter? What do you guys do?
So I would say Urban & Co, the primary thing is that we act as a single point of contact for our clients through the entire design and construction process. So many design firms potentially would get involved in doing concept designs and then leave, or concept designs and detailed drawings and then leave, and then the build starts.
And a lot don't even do design. They just do pure project management or facilitation.
So we just try and hold the client's hand from start to finish, essentially.
So you guys are able to lead from the first day, from concept
all the
manage
way
it all the way
So
to completion.
we're there when they get the keys on the last day to say, look, you've paid your final invoice, everything's done, come check it out. So we're there as well doing inspections and make sure everything's up to scratch, and make sure there's no defects or anything like that. But essentially the way we've set up our business is to do the full design, to do all the council approval or private certified approvals, as well as manage all the sub-consultants as well.
So that's a little bit of town planning.
So the design and planning, and then we work with the builders and make sure that sort of personalities align as well, because at the end of the day, like, the builder's the one sending the client the invoice. They've got to be happy to pay the invoice, and we just got to make sure there's a level of trust before anything goes ahead to make sure the process is as smooth as possible.
And I think also, particularly in that market that you guys are working in, they're busy people. They are busy in their own lives and their own jobs and careers.
Yeah.
So when you're building around this area of Sydney and other areas, you're the go-to guys to help hold their hand through the whole process.
And that's a key thing. A lot of our clients are time poor, so they have, obviously, based on where we're kind of working within one of the more sort of better defined areas of Sydney, your clientele are going to be successful. They are going to be busy and not necessarily have either the knowledge, but more likely the time to sit down. I'm sure a lot of them, if they had the time, they could sit down, they could piece it all out and attempt to sort of walk through it. But
or they've been through it once
and
learnt the biggest lesson.
Exactly.
And that's
which is
the
stick
thing.
to what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And building's not easy.
Nope.
The clients that we're dealing with are putting up for the construction cost $1 to $8 million, like, out of their own money to fund their dream house, plus then obviously the purchase of the land. So there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of decision making involved in that process. So I suppose we're there from start to finish to make that go as smooth as possible within budget, but also get a product that they absolutely love.
As always, we always like to take it back. So where did you guys grow up?
The mighty town of Albury Wodonga, the border of New South Wales, Victoria. So, pretty sort of well known to some people, but not as well known to others. But
so mixed blood.
Yeah, mixed blood. We're on the good side. They were on the New South side. So
it's a great little country town and a good place to grow up too, like right on the river and plenty
definitely.
of outdoor sports and footy, I'd imagine.
Yeah, AFL.
Yeah, it's a good place growing up with sports. It's pretty much all we did growing up was school and sports. So
pretty much went to school to
footy,
went to school to play sport. So AFL, tennis, footy, cricket, pretty much everything.
Had a tennis court in the backyard, so we were pretty competitive.
Yeah, no, we enjoyed it. Yeah, there was always something to do, and I think growing up, like on a property as well, sort of gave us a bit of freedom to kind of finish school, come home, and run wild and play a bit of tennis or run up the hill and disappear, and sort of come back when it's dark.
It's that good old classic Aussie upbringing.
Yeah, definitely.
Going through school, did you guys have any aspirations to eventually get into construction?
No, I sort of went through school and started life as a high voltage electrician. So that was my kind of first insight into, you know, the construction world and that sort of thing. But yeah, mainly that was probably done through, I guess, connections and sort of needing somewhere else to go other than university at the time, which was obviously something that I ended up doing. But yeah, for me, certainly not. But I guess from...
Yeah, I suppose I was sort of always in the design area. When I was in school, I sort of wanted to do graphic design or something like that and just wasn't quite sure. And then, yeah, just did a bit of working experience around the sort of the construction industry and then realised that, yeah, the design space is what I sort of like doing the most.
So were you guys sort of plodding away in that area in the Albury region and in your respective jobs back then?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, so there's a 6-year age gap between Tom and I. So I was kind of well and truly in my apprenticeship at, you know, left school in year 11, but I was young for my years, so I was sort of like nearly, you know, on the verge of my 17th birthday, working away doing my apprenticeship. Obviously, Tom still being at school, we'd always been quite close and playing sport together, and, you know, sort of keeping in touch and things. So we kind of always, right back from that first, you know, sort of original time that I sort of got into the workforce, it was always talking about, you know, working towards a business of some description. So we kind of always knew that we wanted to, you know, work for ourselves and we wanted to kind of form things, you know, in our own time. And
I think we always sort of schemed about working together and how we're sort of going to come together in the future, and went through a few different renditions of businesses. I think went through 3 or 4 different versions, and then it wasn't until later, after we had a bit of experience in our fields, that we sort of said, well, this is actually a business that we can make work. And yeah, like we sort of came together and worked on a business structure, and yeah, 4 years later, we've just turned 4, Urban & Co. And we sort of got everything working pretty well at the moment.
The funny thing is, though, looking back, I reckon it's kind of a mixture of a few things that sort of put that idea in the head. So if you look at our old man, he's a civil engineer and program director of quite a well-known engineering firm around Australia and internationally. So he kind of has the the project manager and the design engineer kind of influence.
He has both sides of the brain.
Yeah, and then I got the project management pathway and sort of process, and in later years I went on to study project management and go down that route, whereas Tom kind of, you know,
the creative side of
got the creative side, so we very much have both sides. Yeah, so it's pretty much me with the structure and the, you know, and the systems and processes orientated, and from a commercial background, and then Tom obviously from the, you know, the smaller boutique sort of, creative.
Yeah, which has sort of worked out well, not sort of like having the expertise in the same area. There's a lot of things that Will doesn't know, which I know, which I brought to the field, and vice versa with what Will knows with his systems, processes and structure, which I think separates us a little bit differently from a few other firms, given that we do have the 2 aspects being the creativity and the systems and processes coming together.
What about the move from Albury to Sydney? What brought you up here?
So Albury is a great place to grow up, but yeah, it's sort of a place where you get to know everyone pretty well, and yeah, we sort of saw Sydney as an option with greater opportunity, and also the lifestyle of the beaches and things like that. Sort of, being from the country, we like open space and getting out in nature, so Sydney was sort of the best sort of fit for our lifestyle, and then with the opportunity as well, obviously construction and design in Sydney at the moment has become crazy, and has for a while. So with our industries, it just sort of made sense.
Yeah, it was definitely an aspirational move. You know, we kind of got what we needed out of Albury, and decided that there were, you know, bigger and better things that we wanted to go on and sort of have a dabble in. Back at that stage, being aspirational, we kind of had no idea it was going to end up, whilst we wanted to and we thought it would, you know, we really didn't actually think it was going to end up, you know, exactly how it has now, you know, being a very well-structured, well-defined, and, you know, holding our kind of space in the market, I guess, which is something that we look back and are quite satisfied with, whilst we're still a long way from, you know, where we want to get to. But yeah, definitely looked around us and sort of rubbed shoulders, you know, through the sporting communities and through other sort of in our early work life and experience, sort of saw where people were at, and then kind of looked to the beach and, you know, other places and thought, well, if, you know, in a perfect world, if there's no constraints, where do we want to be and what do we want to end up doing? And we just did it, you we didn't think about it.
But
So-
also, anyone that knows us pretty well is that we're sort of never that happy with things, and we always like to challenge ourselves. So trying to work for the bigger and better thing is always what we strive to do. So like an example would be, about three months ago, we got all our branding and everything done, and then we were like, "Look, let's start again." Like we're not
Wasn't
quite
good
where,
enough.
not quite where we want to be. So we want to rebrand, redo everything, even though we just spent the last 12 months getting to that point and getting it done. And then we said, "Nah, let's start again." So yeah, having the option in Sydney where there's always bigger and better things to do, it sort of interests us a lot.
Now, I have to take it back. So was it literally two brothers like planning for it and then saying, let's just go to Sydney? Did you have any like contacts? Did you have any
No.
feet in the door? Or
No. So
I reckon we're probably the only
yeah.
people that came to Sydney and started in Sydney
I
with
think-
a business with no
yeah,
contacts.
I think when I moved to Sydney, I think I knew one person. And
Yeah.
within a couple of weeks, sort of only people I knew were people I worked with at my old company at that stage. Didn't really have any friends, didn't really know anyone. And then, we sort of just built it from there. And we love playing sport. So we started playing sports and meeting new people through that way. And, like socialising as well. So, started to create a group of friends.
I
and,
think-
just went from there.
The year that Tom, or just before Tom moved to Sydney, I moved overseas. So I was working internationally around some the Middle East and other countries. Did that for a number of years whilst we were still keeping close contact and talking about what these different ideas were. So it actually ended up being pretty much every morning on the way to work, I'd drive to work and Tom would be in the initial stages of what was the shell of Urban & Co., doing the town planning and minor design jobs. And then we'd always sort of throw some conceptual ideas around property development, around design firms, around project management consultancy. Like it was pretty much, when looking back, it was all of the above that got sort of into this concoction of a business model that we now sort of working to at the moment under Urban & Co. So
But when Will was overseas, his drive to work, how long was it? An hour?
yeah, it's probably 45 to an hour.
So
yeah.
his drive to work was about an hour before my job started. So we'd literally spend every morning, Monday to Friday, on the phone for about an hour going through different options and how we're going to do this and how we're going to do
Quite
that.
funny though, because I'm very people that know me, I love my like seeing numbers and working out strategy and that sort of stuff. So like we'd have our chat and I'd sort of punch out some numbers that night and I'd be like, no, well, I think this business model is not going to be as beneficial as this business model, and I can see a way through this one but not this one. And then a few years of sort of backing and forthing, it it ended up being the start of what it's become. But yeah,
So I think it took about 2 years from when we decided that we wanted to have a design firm doing residential homes. Yeah, it took about 2 years from when we started talking about it, going through different models, to when we actually started it up.
Yeah, I think the growth strategy as well was kind of, Tom being a town planner and involved in urban design and urban planning, it was sort of, we talk about moving to Sydney, not knowing anybody, not knowing, normally a lot of the people in the contacts we know have been to private schools. They've got a huge, extensive network.
Absolutely.
They finish school, they go and they do their trade, and they've got 27 contacts they already know, and then they're off and running, and they've got their first 3 years of contracts already figured out.
Correct.
For us, it was the opposite. It
Yeah,
was
that
kind
was
of like,
definitely the toughest thing for us, is not having that network that a lot of the other people
Particularly here in the eastern suburbs
yeah,
of Sydney.
absolutely.
I suppose we did work pretty hard on relationships, and I think our first 18 months, we didn't have a website, didn't have any social media. It was literally just word of mouth. So I think the avenues we took early on worked, because we did a good job with our projects. Clients really happy, referred us on to their friends and family. And I think that was about 18 months before we got any social media or website.
Whilst there was a lot of unknown, it was still quite calculated and planned in terms of the growth strategy. So for our business model, it was, we didn't want to go to the bank and get a huge business loan and be like, hey, let's throw it into the wind and see how we go and end up where we end up. It was, let's self-fund everything. Let's grow at our own pace. And the method to do that was utilize Tom's town planning with my project management. So start off doing town planning work and then grow into larger town planning projects, and then grow into design projects, and then grow into larger high-end. And the aim was always to get to the high-end sort of custom design boutique residential house designs, which is obviously where we are now. So it was a very calculated path through it.
So you obviously had a pretty clear vision of where you wanted Urban & Co. to to end up.
Yeah. And in all honesty, there was a lot of times along the way, though, where particularly in the earlier days when, when things are self-funded and you're working to a strategy and then all of a sudden it's, for whatever reason, the industry goes quiet or something happens and you start questioning yourself and wondering, is it our business model that's not working? Is it the industry? Should we hang in? Should we not?
What are those moments like? Because they're pretty lonely nights, aren't they?
It's definitely tested the relationship. Like, I don't think we would have been able to do it being just two strangers, maybe working together for a bit before and then trying to do it. I suppose the brothers aspect and being family and best mates has definitely helped us along that route. I think we probably would have come unstuck if we didn't know each other.
Yeah,
or
definitely.
Just met like we're friends or something like that. But yeah, it is tough, and you sort of spend 4 years of work or however long it is, and then there's obviously a bit of tough moments, especially with what's happened recently with the industry and things like that. But yeah, I think we've stood the test, which is good.
It's funny. An old boss said to me when I was leaving, I'd run ridiculously large projects and complex projects around the world in different places at different times, and I knew how to do that very well because I had a good team around me. The funding for the projects was there. It was all kind of yours to lose because it was all laid out in front of you. Whereas
The fundamentals were there.
they were all there. And you had the support network to do it. So when you leave that and then you come here with your aspirational ideas to start your own company, you have some contracts coming in. But yeah, those lonely nights. It was one thing he said to me. I noted was you just don't have a stress like you have when you own your own company, and you get to those times where there is nowhere else to look, there is nowhere else to go. You're the one that has to feed the people that are working for you. You're the one that has to guarantee that while you're looking at the work now, you're also required to look for that work in the future to then bring it in, to then make sure it's all coming together. And that's probably the worst. It's probably the worst stress I've ever had in my life. In the early stages of making sure, firstly, we can keep feeding ourselves and keep alive and keep between the contracts when they're coming in, but also, when you start having staff members and things like that, we always endeavoured to run a small team that we had good relationships with and got along really well and really close. So employees aren't numbers, they're not objects. We all want to create a good culture, work together and achieve things. Yeah, so when you sit down, you're in between certain contracts, it's a very, very dark, lonely time to wonder, now I've got to pull money out of my own pocket to pay my employee in the early days because we know that we've got this next contract, but it's not ready to start yet, but we've already signed it and everything else. So obviously the company's far matured from there, and we're sort of doing really well now in our network and have our established place in the market. Pretty scary.
It is.
Ride.
But it's also that same boss said something to me at Will's farewell party. He said, make sure you enjoy the process. Don't make it a 2-year fix. Look long-term, 10 to 15 years, which is what we've sort of done. We sort of worked on sustainability for the business and how we can set up things properly and not take shortcuts. And yes, things might take us a bit longer, or it might cost us a lot more, but in 15 years' time or 10 years' time, we're going to be a lot better off, and this business is going to be sustainable rather than trying to do quick fix for 2 or 3 years and make some money, yes, but then sort of work out what we're going to do after that. So.
Yeah, it's about laying those foundations, really. And you mentioned a couple of key words there, which was support network. So who do you sort of lean to in regard to your support network? Like, who do you talk to about these things?
Our family's pretty close. Having 4 siblings, me, Will, and we got 2 sisters as well. And we're always pretty close with mum and dad. But funnily enough, our elder sister being a teacher, she's sort of always good to chat to and help us out. But then our other sister owns a podiatry business with her husband. So they're sort of, I think they started 2 weeks after Urban & Co started. So we're about the same age. And yeah, they were obviously going through small business stress at the same time we were, which was really good to have someone in a completely different industry being like, yep, this is hard. It's not just you guys. So
kind of that reality check.
Yeah.
Hey, this stuff is hard. It's not just you. It's not just your industry. There are other people.
Yeah. Bo's dad as well, being in the industry that he's in and his experience and what he's done is really impressive. So I think anytime me and Will have always been like, this is too hard, or we're not quite sure, how do we do this or how do we do that, he's usually the first person we sort of call and go through things.
I think for me personally as well, my partner Jade, I've leaned on her a lot to kind of steer me in those right directions along those lonely sort of times, and that reality check, I guess, as well, that it will be okay. You just got to get through that hard part.
She has to put up with me as well. So
Yeah, Tom's our adopted child.
I'm the adopted son.
But yeah, I think like for me as well, I'd spent forever, sort of battling through the stresses of the corporate world and, sort of doing all that by myself. So it's kind of really nice and sort of stabling at the moment, to actually have that support network around us personally with the, with the relationships and also the, the family as well, to kind of get us through where we're.
But also we sort of set up the business as a lifestyle as well as doing the work. We want to make sure that all our employees love what they do and enjoy coming to work, but we try and make it as enjoyable as possible. So I suppose our network within the business and the companies is really good. Like whether it's taking afternoons off to go for walks with the dogs or having an early lunch or things like that with the whole team. And we're just trying to make it as enjoyable as possible and make sure everyone's sort of got the support network that they need to make sure that everyone's happy and keeps going. So
going back to what Tom was saying earlier, building a business model that doesn't strive to make the quick wins, like building a sustainable business model so that way you're not relying on your advertising to win work. You're not relying on the perfect world for contracts to come in like clockwork. It's about having that established network, having that proven performance. And then I think through doing that and creating a sustainable sort of framework, you're going to get that continuity of sustainable work going forward.
But also having Will's systems and processes in play, which sort of how we operate the business, we've got sort of real-time data. So after a 6-month or 12-month period, we can work out where work's coming from, who's giving us work, how everything's going, how long things are taking, so that we can sit down, spend a couple of weeks analysing everything and say, well, we're lacking in these areas or we need to put more effort into these areas to make sure that we're getting work from different avenues so that certain things don't dry up. And it's just, it's really good with the sort of flow of work coming in and sustainability as well.
Yeah, and just that finger on the pulse, to exactly what the business needs. It's like a growing organism, isn't it?
Well, I work with a lot of builders and I always refer to it as like a beast. And it's about getting that beast up to a stage where it's starting to feed itself and grow, receive nourishment and that's so hard to do because it isn't one person. It's a party of people, and there's a heap of challenges in that as well. And
the key thing around going back to when we sort of back and forth what the business model was going to be and how it was going to work, it really in summary is putting together a lessons learnt of the industry and then utilising our expertise in-house and assembling like the A team or the perfect team to be able to bring the designer in, bring the town planning in, bring the project manager in, bring the best builder in, vet that builder and understand how to set up that project management of the build all the way through to the end. So we understand that our clients have a significant financial outlay. We understand that they're probably going to be time poor. We understand that they have their family life that they're trying to balance as well. So our aim is to create, through having good relationships, maximise as much as they can out of their designs. You hear a lot of horror stories about some clients potentially, not being able to maximise the size of the land that they're on or potentially missing that block of land that they could have built on, by applying a different approach, which is what we potentially come in and assist them with. So, we just want to make sure our clients can achieve something that they can live in with their families and enjoy it with their, when they're entertaining their friends and bringing their kids up, for their, whether it be for their forever home or their 10-year home or if it's an investment property as well. So
it's almost like you're like a platoon, of foot soldiers being dropped on the ground, and your mission's to like assemble the right team to be quite strategic and because those jobs that you guys are working on, they're not 6-12-month projects. They're several years.
Yeah.
Lots of excavation, challenging sites.
Well, the thing is, before the client even speaks to us, they've been dwelling on them for 2, 3, 4 years. Like some of the projects clients have spent 12 million plus on the block of land. So then obviously there's a bit of a lag between buying the block of land and then spending a lot of money on the build. So it's a couple year thought process before they get to us. And then like some of the bigger jobs, it's 18 months in the design phase, or if it's a smaller job, it's 6 months. And then the build processes are taking 12, 18 months to 2 years to do as well. So it is a long process. So, that's why we sort of like to personality match and make sure everyone gets along before projects are started otherwise.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things in that is, with the clients that have been dwelling on it or obsessing on it, and trying to figure out exactly how they're going to live in this new design, they'll come to us and they'll have their plan, and it will be nearly always drawn in a box, and it will nearly always have recurring themes about how people see, living and designing in a house should be. And then obviously...
So it's like a visual thing.
A visual thing, very visual. So it's... but obviously because they don't understand and know what our design side sort of take into consideration, we always get that brief, we always understand it, we analyse it, but we forget the shapes that they've drawn, and then we come back to them with 2 or 3 different versions of ways that they never ever would have thought about, but achieve everything and more that they would actually be looking to get with out of their design based on how they want to live and what's important to that family or that that entertaining aspect as well. So yeah, it's always a nice thing when they come to us and they say, I don't care what you say, I've been thinking about this for a year, it has to be like this, I just want your job, don't even think about it, just draw that. And then it's like, all
we
right.
had one in Stanmore Park where she said, this is what I want this one. And I said, okay, but I'm going to do a different concept and we'll bring it to you and see what you said. And she's like, no, I just want this one. So we gave her 5 different concepts of the one she wanted, and the 7th concept was one that was completely different. We showed her at the meeting and she goes, yeah, I want that one. Which was completely
That's
different.
That's the fun of the job and the
Yeah.
innovation, I guess, and the design expertise is, is sort of nice to be able to show that to the clients and see their reactions.
It is, and that's also what I call like successful influencing. Sometimes you have to be quite strategic in how you deal with a client or how you try and manage the process and get something that's a win-win outcome.
Yeah. I suppose at the end of the day, we're designing for our client, not for us. So if they're the one footing the bill and spending all the money on the build, we have to think about what they want and take into consideration what they want and just sort of massage and make it work.
That's right. And I think too, like most clients or some clients, they like being challenged in an organic way, in a nice roundabout way.
Yeah.
That, like you just said, that massaging to be able to get that idea, you can see it ticking away, and then they're fighting it, and then you get it over the line.
Yeah, and that's the intention of our kind of process that we do or that we take them on along the design journey is exactly that. It's an iterative process where unlike a lot of other firms potentially, they're very transactional, and you get your first design, and then after your first design, then you get 2 iterations of adjustments, and then by that time you have to have made up your mind, and then we're progressing. Ours is actually about taking them on that journey and refining that process to make sure they are happy.
Because what will happen is we'll give them the concepts, they'll tick off and say, yep, this is what I want, I love it. And then they'll have a dinner party over Christmas or something like that where their cousins are around or their family's around, and they're like, what about this? And they're like, oh, I didn't think of that. So there's always changes that are going to come. So we just try to encompass that as part of the process.
So what about like property development? So we've been talking about mums and dads and home buyers. What about sort of property developers or investors?
Yes.
Do you guys work with those guys as well?
Definitely. So we've done a lot of developments for clients as well. Yeah, a lot of our clients have sort of got some money they want to invest and things like that. And part of, I suppose, my background is feasibility and development opportunities and trying to work out essentially what the highest yield or what the maximum development potential is of a site. So our service with our clients is that we can, if they've got a site in mind, we can sort of do a feasibility and work out exactly what can go there, what the cost of the build is going to be, what the process is going to be, how everything sort of fits in together in the process, and then also facilitate the design and approval services for them as well. It's a bit of a different process for developers, given that it is for money. It is an investment for them. Whereas with the clients, the design process is a lot more how are you actually going to use this house, what's the best fit for you. Whereas for developments, it's what is going to sell the best, what's on the market at the moment, what's the availability of other stock around. Yeah, so things like making sure that there's a master suite on the ground floor so you don't knock out 50% of your market or 50% of your buyers and things like that. It's so it's a bit of a different take when you do it for developers. But yeah, we have done a fair bit around especially the eastern suburbs and the inner west.
Okay, so take me on the journey of what a typical brief looks like with you guys.
So I guess initially, when we receive that request from the client, our first aim is to cut the chase and avoid all the backing and forthing via emails and phone, etc. We like to get the client to come in and meet us or sit down, in their home as well, and just understand what are they actually wanting to achieve, how are they looking to go about, entering into the design process? Do they have any ideas? Are they fresh off the cusp of not having anything? And from that initial design strategy session is what we call it, we're able to leave there understanding what they actually are looking at doing.
We've got our full ammunition then to sort of have a well-designed concept or a bit of a grasp of exactly what they're after as well for the full process.
So by that stage, I'd imagine most of your clients, they already have the site acquired, or they know at least where they want to live.
Yeah.
Here's a rough idea, the types of blocks, or this is our site, this is what we want, and we want you to deliver it and manage the whole process. Because I'm tied up, I'm a doctor, or I'm a professional. I don't have time or the stress or the patience to deal with this. So I want you guys to manage this process and this project successfully for me.
And that's what we do. We sit down with them at the beginning and try and get as much information out of them as possible. So, for example, some clients never do their washing. They have people that come and get their washing and never spend time in the laundry. So they would say, I'd rather repurpose the money for an awesome laundry into a better kitchen, which I
because I love entertaining.
Or a wine cellar, which I think every client lately has been saying, so where's my wine cellar going?
Yeah, exactly.
So we sort of get to know them pretty well, and we spend as much time as possible at the beginning to sort of work out their personalities, what they like, what they don't like, get Pinterest boards, and that sort of creates a bit of a platform for us to get the best concept to them. And it means that there's less revisions of the concept phase as well. We sort of found at the beginning we didn't do that as much, and there'd be 4, 5, 6 revisions of the concepts, whereas now it's 1 or 2 revisions of the concepts, and clients are a lot happier in getting exactly what they want earlier on, which is really good.
So one of the ways, a tool that we developed to do this is give them a help me help you form. So basically we coach them without them thinking through telling us what their design brief actually is.
So like zones of living, what areas they use the most, how many kids do they have?
Style, influence of design. So basically telling us all of these needs that they would probably, when they would
So it's like a survey.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And
a survey with
electric car charging stations, which aren't that common. Like we would never think to put one in a house unless the client comes to us with the ammunition for us to do it. So we've had a couple of clients that say, we want to get electric cars in the next couple of years, so we need to factor this into the design. So then in the garages, we're making sure there's enough storage and enough room for them in there. So things like that, if we get that at the beginning, it's going to mean that the concept, that the first round of concepts that they get is going to be really close to what they're after.
Yeah. And at that stage, are you preparing like CAD floor plans, or do you do hand-drawn sketches
No,
as well?
so we sort of spend a lot of money on software and I suppose the client experience side of things. So we give them full floor plans, elevations, and essentially a 3D model. So we can do a full walkthrough, a virtual walkthrough on the big screen with exactly how the house is laid out, how it's going to work.
So that's like a BIMX model?
Yeah, it's a lot more, it is. It's a lot more detailed and a lot more realistic. When the concept's done, we can get it so good that you can't tell if it's real or fake. But obviously with changes pending, we sort of wait till that happens. But yeah, we sort of make the user experience as enjoyable as possible. So that when we give them the first round of concepts, it's an exciting phase.
Yeah, and
it's
we
not
try
just
to get
2D floor plans, it's 3Ds, it's walkthroughs, it's animations, it's models.
Because we do understand, unless you're in our industry and seeing it all the time, there's no point paying X amount of dollars for us to design something that looks amazing, in 2D. But unless you're sitting there in front of us and we're spinning that model around and we're walking you through your living room, or we're walking you around the entertaining area, or showing you what your master bedroom looks like, or all the intricate things that you've wanted, you're not going to understand it. So we may as well get you in, walk you through, and basically show you where we're heading before we get to that detailed stage.
And what Will just said then is pretty crucial. Yes, it's good to make the clients excited, but getting them to understand actually what's going to be on their site in that form is really crucial. Because if the clients are spending this money and then 2 years later when it's built, they turn up on site and say, I didn't think it was going to be like this, I don't like this, or I'm not quite sure about this, you can't really go back. So if we can nib any of that out at the beginning through this process, then that's the best way to do it for us.
And it's a double-edged sword, and it's fortunate for you guys, and you've obviously worked hard to cement your position in that market, where you're lucky enough to be able to work with that. Mm-hmm. So you can take your client directly onto that journey. That's your market. You know?
Definitely.
So
and I think just as critical as it is to understand what they have to have, it's about what would you like to have as well. So if for some reason there was
wish list.
Yep, there was some spare money and we could put some bits and pieces in there, forget about budget. Tell me what you'd like to have, because as Tom said, if it works out that you don't do your washing and you're lucky enough for someone to come and pick it up all the time, and you tell me you want to have the biggest, amazing entertaining area in the kitchen, or a double island bench or something like that, we can have the ability to pull in and drag around, your wants with your needs as well. So it's about just understanding how we can maximize the most out of that.
But also the way our company's set up is that we're not doing 100 jobs a year. So we're not just quickly doing some floor plans and saying, here's your concept. Like, we only work on a couple jobs at one time, meaning that we do spend a lot of time like curating these concepts to give you the best visualization of what's actually going to be on site.
Yeah, and then that kind of rounds out the concept design process, and then we move into, again, not a transactional approach, so work with the client to establish exactly what that's going to look like. Once we're happy with that, then we proceed to doing the detailed drawings and preparing them for lodgement to council or to the relevant private certifier if it goes down a CDC route. Working through there, lodging it into council, again, writing the statement of environmental effects or other associated required documentation exactly in the lingo that council are expecting. Tom obviously used to work for council as well in earlier days, so we kind of have that understanding of exactly how to write the different documentation to hit the mark first time on the head.
And we put a bit of strategy into it as well, not just saying, okay, this is a DA, let's lodge it. Like, we might do parts through a CDC, we might do parts through a DA, and just work out what's going to take away the contention for neighbours to complain or anything like that, and then detail our reports accordingly.
So you're very involved. If I could pick a typical brief where you're building quite a large eastern suburbs house in Sydney here, you're potentially involved for up to 5 years. You're working with your client.
Yep. Yeah. Different stages.
Time.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're there. It's a big journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and
we get to know them pretty well.
Yeah, and that's why the relationships is critical, because that they soon learn to trust us and come to us for all of the associated advice along the way. But more than likely, what happens is we're working on that project, and then because of geographically where we are, that client will then be looking at doing an investment property along the way as well, or their friend also is doing or embarking on the same journey as that one as well. So for us, having that relationship, which is very pleasing for us, for them to not only trust us with theirs, but then refer firsthand to their best friends or their other family members and things like that, to then start the same process again. So it can be quite common that, with one family, we have two builds on the go, or 3 builds on the go, or designs on the go at different stages, with different members of the family or best friends or everything else in between. So it's it's a very involved, personal sort of journey that we like to sort of take the clients through.
Yeah, look, I say it just about every week. Those relationships and word of mouth referrals, they're the greatest forms of compliments, really.
Definitely, and they far outweigh any sort of planning to gain additional contracts through advertising and any of that sort of stuff. I think for us, we've pretty much built the business on referrals, haven't we? Really.
Well, it's almost a pat on the back, I suppose. When we get a referral in the office, we're pretty excited, saying that we must have done a good job in the last one for them to let us on to their friend.
Now, I know you guys are still on the journey and getting started, but is there anything that you look back on and wish you could have changed or done things a little differently?
Absolutely. Like, there's lots of things I wish we would have changed, but I'm glad we went through them, because I suppose our business model right now, like, it's exactly where we want it to be, and we're on the right path, and we definitely wouldn't have gotten to where we are without those mistakes or trial and error or different versions of the business. So I think there's definitely been 3 or 4 times where we probably haven't taken the right path or haven't done the right thing with the business structure or services offered or anything like that. But I think I wouldn't want it to change given what we learnt out of it.
Yeah, it's one of the old project management sort of sayings that we used to always go through was the whole continual improvement or lessons learnt. So we've been very big on that, making sure that we, while something doesn't go our way, we stop and we understand why didn't it go our way, and then we make strategic changes to cater for, yes, it was a once-off, so probably the risk of that of occurring again is very low, or yes, that was a very big thing, we should have done something else and changed it. So I think we've been very good at really being open and honest, and again being brothers, there's not really any pride aside. we just sit down and we assess what happens and we make the appropriate changes. So
that is a good thing. We don't have to tiptoe around a lot of
yeah,
a
exactly.
lot of topics like a lot of other people do. Sort of
But
have
Just
it
come
straight
out and say it or lift the
yeah,
elbow.
have it out.
Yeah.
But no, definitely. Like, there's always things that we would change, and I think going back to the sporting references earlier, when you play sport, and we were lucky enough to play quite high level sport, when you learn how to lose, then you learn how to get better, because you learn how to obsess over knowing what you did wrong and then training and reapplying things or corrective measures to get better. So it's no different in business. You know, you embark on doing something within your best aspirations to have work. It doesn't work, so why didn't it work? And then put the measures in place to fix it, and then be stubborn enough not to stop until it works. And if it doesn't work again, then you go again. But sure enough, if you follow that, it kind of ends up in a semi-decent direction.
And we're both pretty competitive still, even though we don't play any professional sport anymore or anything like that. Like on a Wednesday night we play tennis, and I think people probably think we're professionals or something like that with how hard we're going and how serious we take it.
A lot of egos at stake.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think we're pretty happy where we've ended up now, and through, I guess, the world being in a weird sort of circumstance at the moment, we have actually gotten as a business better, more efficient. We've spent the time to refine business models and make the adjustments that we've needed. We've brought on the staff members that we've needed to bring on from some of the best of their respective firms in Australia. So we have definitely gotten better as a company. We've brought in a better skill base, and we've refined everything to head in a better direction. So,
and at the beginning of COVID, it was a bit of a unknown. We had pretty much all our work put on hold, and rather than saying, "Oh no, let's sit tight and see what happens," we pretty much spent all day, every day, working through the business model and how we're going to get work and how we're going to facilitate it and who do we need to be part of the team, and pretty much rebuilt the whole business from scratch again from there in the way that we do things. So yeah, rather than taking it as a negative sort of area, we said, well, we've got time to actually work through things. Like we haven't got any work on the go at the moment because everything's been paused for a couple of months. So yeah, we just took the opportunity and started again and worked through different models and got.
It's funny, we actually sat down when COVID first happened, and I think we had like in excess of hundreds of thousands of dollars owed to us, and we had to support our staff, we had to pay their salaries, we had to pay our office rent, all of our standard operating costs that a business would have, and with a few $100,000 owing to you and everyone disappearing and not really coming forward to give you the money, we sat down and we kind of had a lighthearted joke, and we said we need to sit down and film like how we feel right now, and then make some bold statements about where we're gonna or how we're gonna use this time to reset and come out the other side better. And I think to our credit, we've definitely done probably more than we set out to do when we very first sat down and said that conversation at the start of COVID in February.
We just saw over social media, everything was so negative, and everyone was like, "Oh, work from home, I'm doing this, doing that." So we sort of said, "Well, 2020, how can it be the best year of our life?" So I think we're probably on track for getting there, definitely.
Yeah, it's about that strategizing and putting it out there and regrouping and then setting up for the newer direction.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
you got to adapt quickly in our industry and the way things are, because there's going to be something in 3 or 4 years' time, something else is going to happen.
There'll be some other impact.
And you just got to be adaptable.
But I feel like that goes down to as well the foundations of having those solid relationships. Like if you have those genuine relationships with the clientele that you're dealing with, and you have your piece in the market that you're well known for, doing a really good job in, people will go through their circumstances such as COVID and the instability in the market and jobs and health, family, whatever. But then when it kind of gets to a stage where it reaches stable, they're going to come back to you. So it might not be just then and there when you expected it to. So as a business, I guess your cash flow and the way that you plan things takes a little bit of a hit. But if you have those longer term relationships, then you'll get those people coming back out one after another, which is exactly what we'd have happen to us throughout this year as well. So,
and I think going back to the start of COVID, that was probably the hardest point in our business since we first started, where we sort of said, we actually sat down like, what do we do? Do we go try and find jobs? Do we not do this with hundreds of thousands of dollars owed to us, which didn't look like was going to come in?
That's going back to your sleapless nights.
Yeah, with $85,000 a month of outgoings with no income for 3 or 4 months. Like
out of your own pocket.
Yeah, how are we gonna do this? Do we just quit and go find jobs, or do we remodel and try and get through things?
And adapt, and that's what came out of it. So in in long, I think the answer is we wouldn't probably change too much because it's been character building, and I think us being brothers, Tom's had to put up with me being a stressed out sort of wreck due to planning and obsessing over systems and processes and finance, but then on the other hand, I've sort of
Will has to put up with me.
Put up with his
very
creativity run. Yeah. So being brothers, we've been able to sort of navigate our way through it. And
I'll come into the office with this great idea, and Will's like, "Okay, let's sit down and plan it."
step outside.
Ease up.
Yeah,
Step outside and have our 5 minutes, and then back in the office and dust ourselves off and keep going. So that works out well.
And it just reminded me, we mentioned relationships quite a few times in our chat, and it just reminded me, if I could think of the many industries out there, there's not too many besides construction where if you have some form of crisis or if you're looking for work, construction's tough. And those relationships, they're not just saying hi, it's literally like you might meet someone, let them know who you are and what you're doing. We're here willing to help you today. It's not for months, maybe not even years before that step, that meet and greet or that transaction, that contact. It's a long time, isn't it?
Absolutely,
it's tough.
yeah. And it's that investment on that longer burning kind of relationship to pay off. And, like you kind of have those two sides where it's like, you want to do, in all instances, you want to do your best to help that person. And then they kind of go off into the, into the distance, and you lose them, or you hope you don't lose them, but they go off and you trust that relationship set enough for them to come back, which then keeps us going and keeps us working and running and being able to help other people. But at the same time, you're like, I need you to come back sooner because we're trying to stay alive as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So
it's such a long investment, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is.
All right, so what's the future look like for Urban & Co. moving forward?
We want to build relationships and work with our clients to be designing the best homes around Australia, not only in Sydney but broader to Brisbane and Melbourne and Perth as well, and then also try and raise the benchmark of architecture around Australia.
Yeah, so we want people to kind of look at a design and know that it was done by Urban & Co. and better yet understand or hear from the people that have had that particular design done that the experience was a very pleasant one. It's changed their way and their perception on how the design and construction process sort of works. But I think the longer term sort of goal is not to be bound by geography and to expand as we already are into Sydney and up to, we've done a number of homes in Byron Bay and so on as well. So just taking that pride in where we are.
And I guess it's extra special because you two brothers working together and coming from a humble family.
Yeah, definitely.
Must be nice to enjoy that and look back and celebrate that as a family.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we often look back and sort of reminisce about the old days of living in the country and, coming from a background where, Dad was kind of the hard-working sort of father that would have that career that was providing for everybody, but also very knowledgeable and able to transfer that knowledge into all of the kids in their different respective industries and expertise. And then on the other hand, we have Mum, who's kind of holding up the fort, running around with 4 kids, dropping some off at music practice, dropping some off at sport, taking some to sleepovers or whatever it might be. So I think with those two sort of yin and yang, it kind of built those foundations for us to be able to build into what we've sort of transpired to do today.
Yeah, and the combination of Mum and Dad now, we've sort of got Sarah, our eldest sister, in Albury, and me and Will here, and Laura in Perth. So Mum and Dad are always interested to see how we're going, and they're actually really good at keeping in touch with us and keeping an eye on us and making sure we're all right and helping us out wherever they can. So that's been really good.
Yeah, that's really nice. Look, I've really enjoyed this, and Tom and Will from Urban & Co. It's been really nice to get to know you guys and sit down and have a chat, and appreciate you guys coming on to Build Hatch.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate having us.
Thanks very much. It's been fun.
Well, that was another Build Hatch episode with Tom and Will from Urban & Co. What a story, and I like how these brothers spoke about how in order to win, you also need to learn how to lose as well. That's an important principle. As usual, please check out our Instagram where you'll be able to learn more about our guests and the features of the work that we talk about. Have a great week, and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.